Welcome, everyone. Sorry for keeping you there in the waiting room for a couple of minutes. Welcome to this month's latest webinar from Conservation Careers, and this is all about how to apply for any conservation job. Now, before we start, as always, I just hope you're all safe and well wherever you are, and it's a real pleasure to have you joining us this evening or morning or lunchtime or whatever the time is for you. My name's Nick from Conservation Careers. I'm the director and founder, and joining me tonight is Kristi Foster over there in Vancouver. Hey, Kristi, how you doing?
Hi, everyone. Really well. Exciting to be here. We had well over 1,000 people sign up for this webinar, so we're really excited. And this is actually the first time that Nick and I have co-webinared, that we've done a webinar together, the two of us, in like over a year. So that's kind of exciting too.
In a while, yeah, and it's so great. We've had such a response. It's obviously such a hot topic for people as well. So I'm really kind of keen to get stuck into it tonight. So let's get cracking. And yeah, great to be kind of reconnecting in a live format and a webinar, Kristi. It's good to kind of be together again. We've been kind of co-hosting separately recently, so it's nice to be back together. So today we're all here to talk about job applications. And did you know that 90% of conservation job applications are of poor quality? Okay, so when we look at them ourselves, and also when we kind of do surveys of employers across the sector, we find about 90% of applications just aren't kind of making the cut. You know, and we invest, years of time and sometimes thousands of dollars or pounds, into getting training and experience and becoming qualified and competitive. But we often overlook one of the most key skills, which is, how to apply for jobs at the end of the process. It really is the kind of the cherry on top, if you like, of the cake. And it's a huge barrier to career success for so many. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to share our top tips for our proven kind of system or step-by-step process for job applications. So thanks for being here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to slide view. If I can get my tech to kind of play ball. Click share screen. Okay, we're going to switch to slides and we're going to kind of kick things off. So I've just switched slides. Now, while we do this, I'm going to walk us through the things we're going to cover tonight. Okay, but before I kind of walk through these 5 things, I'd really like to hear from you guys online. If you can just use the chat box and just say a quick hello, it's Nick here in the UK. I'd love to hear, hello, who are you and where are you as well? It'd be just kind of great to hear from you guys. They're on the call right now. And while you guys do that, I'll give you a little bit of an outline as to what we're going to cover this evening. So you can see them here on screen. So we're going to cover 5 things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to cover some stats, okay, from conservation job seekers like yourselves, but also from employers too, to kind of share what we've seen and what we know about the sector and just provide some kind of context to that. Then we're going to talk about really the turning point, okay? And there's kind of 2 key factors that really influence application success. We'll talk a little bit about what those 2 things might be. And then really we're going to spend the majority of the hour that we have together this evening talking about the 6 top mistakes, okay? And also, more importantly, what you can be doing instead, how you can avoid them. Then we've got a little special announcement that we're super excited about at the end before we're going to go to a Q&A, okay? So there'll be time at the end for questions and answers. Feel free to add some questions as we go. We do have a Q&A box there. We won't be answering them till the end, but feel free to drop them in. And also feel free during the webinar to go to that Q&A box as well and to kind of upvote the questions that you really like the look of, okay? And then we'll try and answer the most popular ones at the end with as much time that we have available there. Okay, so that's what we're going to cover. Okay, so let's see. I can see we've had some loads of chats in there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Lauren from South Africa. Alice from Leeds. I'm from Leeds as well. Hi from Bahrain, Jamal as well. Good to see you on the call. Thank you. Have we got anyone from some? We've got some from Zimbabwe here. Nokoya, thank you. Lisa from Leeds. We've got Okposia from Nigeria. I apologize if I said your name wrong. Cynthia from Lebanon. I saw someone from the Philippines there as well, from Cambridge in the UK, just down the road from me right now. There are loads of you from all over the place, Montreux, Switzerland as well. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. I can't obviously read you all out this evening, but it's so nice to have you all on the call. Let's get into the discussion then this evening. Okay, so we'll start off. What we'll do is we'll kick off with some key stats, just a couple of quick slides, just to kind of give you a bit of an overview of what we've kind of learned about the sector in the last 6-12 months or so. So earlier this year, we asked about 200 conservationists, graduates, students, career switchers as well, about your experiences of applying for conservation jobs. And what we discovered, you can see some kind of high-level stats on screen here, is that job seekers like yourself, typically apply for about 39 jobs on average per year. That's an average. Obviously, it goes far higher than for some and less than others, but that's typically just under a job a week on average. And what we found, which is quite humbling really, is about 85% of conservationists are experiencing what we call like application burnout, with feelings of perhaps being lost or dejected or just feeling a bit stuck. Many of you are ideally suited to the roles that you're applying for, but the application process is proven to be a real barrier for you, and getting through to interview is the bit that just needs to be unlocked, to kind of help you along a little bit more. And sadly, only a kind of small percentage, about 10% of job seekers, are having a really high success rate with their applications. And really the majority, about 80%, are experiencing high rejection rates. Okay. So typically 80 to around 90% of applications really don't make it through the cut. Okay. And don't make it through to that next round of shortlisting and through to interviews. So we feel for you really. Now, there is some good news. Okay, so employer stats, when we look at them, the good news is there are hundreds of new jobs available every day. Okay, so in Conservation Careers, we share about 12,000 jobs per year. And that's still the tip of the iceberg, really. We have, if we cover maybe a third of the market, which I think is still probably an underestimate, there'll be something like 36,000 jobs available every year globally within the conservation sector, and it's growing, okay, all the time. Now, the most popular roles can receive somewhere between sort of 35 and upwards of 350 or so, and on rare applications, even more applications. But that's just for the really popular ones, okay? So I don't want you walking away from here thinking you're up against hundreds of applications every time. You're not, but for the really popular ones, you can be up against a large number of other individuals applying for those roles as well. When we look at more specialist roles, we ran a webinar a couple of months ago now with the RSPB and also Conservation International, and we asked them the question, how many applicants do you typically get for specialist jobs? And for RSPB, they said between 10 and 50. And for CI, Conservation International, that's about 100 applications. There's still large numbers there at CI, for the kind of specialist roles. And of those, CI said that fewer or less than 10% of all applications are what they call good quality. So in other words, 90% of applications are just not good enough, And I hate to say, I'm not going to say you're wasting your time, but, you're really not putting in applications that could be as good as they should be in order to get you through that stage and get you through to interview. And despite that, there's loads of jobs available, and despite there being lots of job seekers like you applying, conservation employers do tell us all the time they often struggle to receive quality applications for their roles. Okay, so if you can put in good applications, you have a really good chance of getting through to interview, and therefore a good chance of getting hired as well. So it's worth noting, as before we kind of go into the next part of the discussion, that you only have a short amount of time really to kind of grab employers' attention. Now, they say typically 3 minutes or even less than that, 6 seconds, we've heard as well, for a recruiter to decide whether you are worthy of their attention. And typically, at that point, they're going to read everything in much more detail. They're going to really read your cover letter and CV in great detail, but 3 minutes is what they typically give to decide whether it needs that kind of deeper cut, that deeper reading. So really, you don't have long to grab attention and to show your value. So, Kristi, let's talk about turning points.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So when you're applying for jobs, really there's two key things that are influencing your chances of success, right? And the first is really obvious, it's what we all think of. It's your competitiveness. So this is, things like education, training, your knowledge, your skills, your experience, all that kind of stuff. Basically what what you can do and how you do it. And most of us invest a lot in this part. So we go to university, many of us, we take online courses or other training courses, we volunteer, we might do internships, etc. Just pause and think for a minute about what you might have invested so far in terms of time and money into your own competitiveness. But the other factor is actually the quality of the applications that you're submitting. How are you then communicating that information, what you can do, to an employer? And interestingly, very few of us, I'd say, invest much time or money or effort into this part compared to the competitiveness part. We might kind of browse some examples of CVs and resumes and cover letters online, or we look for a fancy template. We might get a little bit of feedback, from a friend or from a university career department, but it's really not that much. And some of us, I think, might even feel embarrassed or a bit silly, having to get help to learn how to apply for jobs properly. So I think what we see often happens is that if you're applying and you're not getting interviews, but you've already, invested quite a bit in getting the right skills and experience, we still assume that the problem is competitiveness. And so then you think, okay, well, maybe I need to invest more time into more courses, more volunteering, etc. And I think a lot of conservationists get sort of stuck in this limbo period, and that might be for months, it might be sometimes for years. And like Nick said earlier, get burnt out, start losing hope, when actually they're like really, really close to landing a job. So actually, when you have the competitiveness and you know how to communicate that in an application, you're going to be able to hit a turning point in your career. And really all it takes is one success, one interview to get there. Perfect. Thanks, Nick. So today, like Nick said, we're going to talk about our top mistakes that we see and the top tips that we can give, what to do instead when you're applying for jobs. And obviously, there's lots of barriers to landing an interview and landing a job. And, you might think of things like lack of funding or lots of competition, or even, unrealistic requirements for voluntary experience, etc. But actually, sometimes the biggest barriers are the ones that we kind of put in our own way because of assumptions that we make. So we're going to dive in and try and dispel any myths or assumptions here. And some of these might seem obvious to you, but actually they show up in probably 99% of the applications that we review and the people that we talk to. So we've picked these ones for a reason. So let's go to mistake number 1. Cheers. So the first mistake is kind of like Nick alluded to earlier, thinking that there's not many jobs available, when in fact the industry is actually booming and there's more jobs available than ever before. And we're posting, about 250 of them per week. But, most of the smaller employers, they just don't have budget for advertising. And so those opportunities aren't getting promoted widely, and they're just really not seen. So in fact, like Nick said, there's probably easily 36,000 jobs available each year. So what can you do instead? If you're feeling like there's not enough jobs out there to apply to, you can learn to apply and find less competitive jobs. So we've got lots of resources to help with that. You can also track employers, so follow employers of interest. And you can create something that, you might call like a master job search sheet in order to help with that. And really it's just an Excel sheet, quite simple. And you can see the example here. If you can see it, it's a little bit small, but it basically just lists, the organization, a link to their job board, some information like where the jobs are based, how frequently they're posting jobs, do you have a contact there, etc. You can customize it. But that lets you track employers to see when they're posting and apply right away. And also you can stop worrying that, when a job comes along, it's your only chance, because there will be more jobs out there. There will be more coming down the line. Don't feel you have to apply to every single thing you see, because then you're more likely to burn out also. All right.
Thank you, Kristi. Yeah, so on to mistake number 2. Another mistake that we see quite regularly is thinking that if you put in enough applications, you'll get an interview, okay? But the problem is playing the numbers game doesn't guarantee success. The likelihood is if you're firing out applications quicker than bullets from Arnie's Uzi 9mm, then the chances are you're doing two things wrong. Okay, one is you're not spending much time on each application to ensure it's really perfectly suited to the job you're after. And it's so important that, you know, you can't just reuse the same CV, cover letter, resume every time, even with the odd small tweak here and there. It is often a case of kind of starting from the ground up again to do a really good job of it. So the mistake number one is not spending enough time. And the second one is that you're probably not being very focused in the jobs you're applying for, and you're applying for perhaps lots of different types of roles. Either way, there's nearly always going to be someone who's putting in a better application than you. Okay, and possibly with a more focused background as well, because they're focused in and found their niche a little bit earlier than you. And therefore, it's quite hard to kind of compete against those people. So what do you do instead? Okay, well, you can see here on screen, there's two things really to do. One is like focus on, excuse me, fewer and better applications. Okay, it's far better to kind of spend more time polishing better applications and putting in few applications. They'll give you a better chance of success. We had a lady on the webinar a couple of months ago called Jet Stubbs, and she told her personal story about how she was putting in 100 applications within 2 or 3 months and getting nowhere with it. And when she actually really took her time and put in 10 really good quality applications over the same period of 2 or 3 months, she got 7 interviews. Okay. And I think that sort of tells a good story. You know, focus in, do a really good job and polish things. Don't just try and put in lots and lots really quickly and hoping that one of them will land, you know, and you'll get lucky. The other thing you can do is just give yourself, therefore, lots of time, you know, to build from the ground up. So give yourself time to produce that quality that you need. Okay, so go slower, produce fewer, produce better. Okay, will help you to avoid this kind of, you know, key mistake that we see happening quite regularly. Kristi, right, over to you for mistake number 3.
Cheers. So mistake number 3 is reusing your CV or resume many times. And I think many of us have been there. You know, I used to do this thing where I'd kind of swap out a few bits and pieces, like the name of the employer, obviously, and move a few things around. But, you know, the bulk of the document was the same. But actually, you know, when you're applying for a job, it's unique, and you need to craft your application from the very start to fit that job and that employer. And yeah, it requires effort, but actually it's not as time consuming as people think. And we have a process, you know, that we use to work through that, and just use building blocks that make up your application. So rather than reusing your CV and your resume over and over again, what you can do instead is really quickly learn how to deconstruct a job application. And by that we just mean, you know, sort of break it down to understand what the employer's perspective is, what exactly do they need. And you can do that in about 15 minutes. And at the end of it, you can write a sentence that basically profiles their ideal candidate, just really succinctly. And that forms, you know, like the main message when you're applying. So let's look at an example of this. I think it's the next slide. Perfect. So here's just a really, really quick example of what this looks like. So if we look at the example job description or job advertisement on the right there, I've just sort of underlined and highlighted in 3 colors, who is this employer looking for? You know, in terms of what qualifications does their ideal applicant have, what experience do they have, what knowledge do they have, et cetera. What is this ideal candidate going to be doing? You know, what's the actual role and their duties, and why are they doing it? You know, what's the bigger reason or the need or the impact of their work? So if you go through that, you can kind of whittle it down into a single sentence. So in this case, for this employer, we've said, I need a junior project manager with knowledge of nature conservation and excellent communications and graphic design skills to develop, manage, and communicate projects that help protect Europe's vast wilderness. So that's kind of in a nutshell what this employer needs in a person. And from there, you can then look at your own experience and your own skills, and you can write a mission statement, we call it, that says how you help and how that matches the employer's needs. So for example, you might write something like, or this applicant could write something like, I'm a certified project manager and communications professional with knowledge of nature conservation and excellent graphic design skills, who develops, manages, and communicates projects that help protect Europe's last wilderness. So you can see there, it's really, obviously it has to be honest, but it's really similar to what the employer is looking for. So it tells the employer what you do and how you can help them. It also answers the question, you know, what makes you the best candidate for that role quite quickly. So then you've got that key message, and you can actually build the rest of your application around that.
Yeah, and I guess the key thing there is, remember before we talked about you got 3 minutes or maybe 6 seconds, you know, and this really is the hook to get the employer to keep reading on. You know, you've positioned yourself so closely to what they're looking for, you know, it really kind of piques their interest. You know, so it's a really kind of valuable skill to learn. Yeah, fantastic. Right, okay, we're just going to pause in the middle here, because what we'd like to do is just kind of to go over to you. Okay, so we're going to put a poll up. In fact, I'll just do that straight away while I can. Launch poll. There we go. Now you should see on your screen, we're going to ask you a question before we go a little bit further. So the question is, which of the following statements do you think is the strongest response to the criteria experience of fundraising? So if you saw a job, okay, and it said, you know, I want someone who's got language skills and experience of fundraising, which one do you think is the strongest? Do you think it's the first one, which says, you know, I'm an experienced fundraiser for conservation projects? If you saw that in a CV or an application, does that sound strong? Or is it, as project officer at RSPB, I developed considerable experience fundraising for conservation projects? Or is it the final one here, which is, as a project officer at the RSPB, I developed 12 project donor proposals, of which 50% were successful, securing £25,678. The resulting Barnell conservation program increased breeding pairs by 16% in 2021. Right, okay, I can see most of you have answered that now. The large majority have. So I'm going to end the poll there. Thank you for sharing your comments. If you didn't quite get there in time, I'm sorry, but I'm going to share the results here. You should be able to see them on screen, okay? So you can just kind of see, you know, hopefully you can kind of see the difference between those. The first one there, which 4% of you thought was quite strong, was, you know, I'm an experienced fundraiser for conservation projects. Now that's the sort of, that's the sort of statement actually we see very commonly in applications, and we kind of call them like an empty worder. Okay, it's very easy to say, you know, do you have any experience of fundraising? Yeah, I'm an experienced fundraiser for conservation projects, but it doesn't tell the job employer very much. You've not proven, you've not provided any evidence there at all of what you've done, how much fundraising you've done, for who and why. Okay, so it's probably the weakest one, and I think probably you see that, you know, most of you thought that was probably the weakest too. Second one up, you know, as project officer at RSPB, I developed considerable fundraising experience. Okay, that's better for sure. Okay, so it's telling us a little bit about you and what you were doing. Okay, so laying the foundation of a story, really. You know, as a project officer at RSPB, right, I know a little bit now. You worked at RSPB and you were a project officer and you developed some fundraising experience, but you haven't told me how much, you know, what different types of fundraising, what the outcomes were. There's lots still missing in that statement. It's better, but it's still not good enough. But you can see that final statement, which is quite a meaty one, and I'm not going to read it all out again because I'll definitely get the numbers wrong. But yeah, 86% of you, I think I share your opinion too, that that's quite a strong statement. And it's strong for 3 reasons, really. One is it lays the groundwork. So you tell me that you worked at the RSPB as a project officer, or perhaps you still are. That's great. Okay, so I know something about you. Tell me about what you did as well. Okay, so you developed 12 project donor proposals. Brilliant. I've got a handle on this now. You've been developing donor proposals. Half of them were successful, 50%, and you secured exactly this much money. Okay, that's brilliant. Even if you stop there, that's a very strong statement, right? But this person's gone the extra mile as well and sort of said, so what, and given an outcome. You know, what did that money then go on to make a difference about? You know, what did it do? So, and it helped some barn owl populations here and some key stats. You can see this sort of the difference there in terms of the amount of information, okay, the background, the meat of it, and also some outcomes, and also some kind of key facts and figures, okay, to really bring it alive, and for an employer to help to measure and gauge how good you are, because you provide some proof, some evidence. So well done, the 86% of you that chose that one. Okay, and thank you for kind of joining in with that poll. I'll go back to screen share if I can. Click that, and then away we go. Right, and we'll move on to the next mistake, which links and segues quite nicely from that as well. So mistake number 4, halfway through the mistakes, okay, is not providing evidence to back up your statements. Okay, this is the person who has considerable fundraising experience but doesn't provide any evidence. Put simply, employers need proof, okay, that you can meet their criteria, or show an ability to learn and meet their criteria, in the future. Okay, and a lot of people are the kind of empty worders, I guess. When you sort of read applications, I've got considerable fundraising experience, I've done some donor management, I've done some project management, but the detail is missing from that. And we're going to walk through an example in a minute as to how to turn this around and how to do this better. The 2 things that we think are really kind of core skills to have around this are, firstly, understanding what we call an evidence matrix, okay, which helps to set yourself up for success. I'm going to tell you all about that in a second, okay? And the other thing is about how to craft these kind of career success stories. How do you tell a story to an employer on a CV, a cover letter, a resume, and showcase, your evidence to them that you can do that job, that you're the right person for that specific role? So let's talk through those 2 things, okay? And I really want to do this in kind of enough detail that you can go off and actually start doing this straight away, because it's such a key skill and it really does kind of turn your applications around, okay, from black to white. Right, okay, so let's take an example of a job you might see online. You can see here in front of you, junior field scientist role with Blue Ventures, and very nicely, as many job organizations, I keep on saying applicants, but it's not, it's the organizations, okay, the people who are recruiting, put in the applications nowadays, they are looking for required and desirable criteria, and they state them really clearly. So hopefully you can read them on screen. I'm sorry if it's the writing's small, but required, they're looking for here someone with a qualification or experience in marine ecology, conservation, fisheries, or related subjects. They want someone with good IT skills, use of Microsoft Office, Google software, essential. They want someone who has experience of training and teaching groups and or individuals, and so on. You can see some other ones there as well. So very nicely, they're giving you exactly what they're looking for, okay? So you can sort of see those on screen. So let's walk through how we would start to pull an application together for this. First thing we'd do is actually we'd create a spreadsheet we'd call an evidence matrix. Down the first column, we'd put all the essential and desirable criteria. You can see here the example that we just walked through, and the first criteria that we talked about was qualification or experience in marine ecology, conservation, fisheries, or related subject. That's the green bit there, okay? Next to it, you want to add like a column for each one of your experiences to date. Okay, they might be studies. You can see a master's and degree here for this individual at University of East Anglia and also Aberystwyth. You might be a volunteer position like the Marine Conservation Society, you can see here too. It might be what you feel is totally unrelated. You're working at Tropic Skincare in sales ambassador and team leader roles. It doesn't matter. There's a whole mix of experiences, but you want a column for each one of those experiences. Then for each of the criteria, just think through each of your experiences today and say, is there anything in there that relates to this? Okay, to try and get a full picture of how you fit that role from across your career today, going right back, okay? For this individual, they did a master's in science of applied marine conservation. Now, straight away, that's the kind of open goal. They've hit that criteria really clearly. So I've emboldened it and underlined it just to make it super clear. They also did in their degree some modules around marine biology, population and community ecology. It's well worth knowing that. You'll want to make sure that's fed into your CV or your resume as well, okay? And there wasn't really anything specific around qualifications at the MSc or Tropic Skincare, although I suspect they could find something from the MSc, the Marine Conservation Society, around experience. It might not be a qualification, but maybe they have something around that too. Okay, so you basically do this for all of them. I'll just walk through 2 more quick examples. I won't do all of them, okay? So experience of training and or teaching groups and or individuals is what it says here, okay? That's another criteria. So again, across those 4 things, this individual, whilst they're at the Marine Conservation Society, they did some work with seminars and webinars for council and community groups. They also did workshops for primary schools. There's some relevant experience in there they need to draw from and highlight. Also, whilst they're at Tropic Skincare, this person coordinated events and they also managed, a team of 5 people. Okay, quite relevant to what this person is looking for in the role. Finally, report writing and analytic skills. Whilst at East Anglia, they published a review paper. They did some RStats modules as well, and analysis. Okay, they did some communicating research module at Aberystwyth, but there was nothing marine within the MSc or Tropic Skincare this individual could draw out. I suspect they probably could actually, but again, just to kind of show this is how you do it. Okay, so start with the criteria, work across your career to date, and really one criteria at a time, just go across and see what you can think of, what you can drag out of your memory of any documents you might find that kind of relate to those things. Then it's time to kind of turn those into stories. And let's just talk about storytelling for a moment. Now, stories typically have 3 bits, okay? They have a beginning, they have a middle, and they have an end. Super simple, okay? So with respect to applications, this often breaks down as follows. So in the beginning, you talk about what was the task at hand, where were you and what were you doing, okay? Don't assume the organization knows you and knows your background. You just have to paint that picture. Project manager at RSPB, running this project, whatever it might be, just lay that foundation, tell the beginning of the story. In the middle, what specific role or roles did you play? What did you actually do, essentially, okay, during your time there that relates to this specific criteria? And then finally, in the end, what was the outcome of the work? What happened as a result of it? You remember the example before, this person was a project officer at RSPB. They submitted whatever it was, 20 or so different fundraising proposals. They raised so much money, and the outcome was barn population started to increase as a result. Okay, so you can sort of beginning, middle, and end. People often miss the end off, and it's the important thing. It's the punchline, really, that people walk away and remember. Okay, so let's talk it through. We'll take one of those criteria from that job and work through that beginning, middle, and end, and show how we can kind of then feed that into CVs and cover letters. So the easiest way to start crafting a success story is to form a question from the criteria. Okay, so the criteria here was ability of training or teaching groups or individuals. That's from that Blue Ventures job, right? Turn that into a question. Okay, so tell me about a time when you've trained or taught a group or an individual. It's a nice open question which you can feel much easier answering, right, rather than just a criteria. And try and make it specific. Tell me about a time, okay, a moment, an instance, not a general thing. Try and pick an individual moment where something happened, because that makes it much more memorable, much more tangible, and more specific as well. We don't want general, we want specific as much as possible. Okay, so tell me about a time when you've trained or taught a group of or individuals. So beginning the story. So, what was the task at hand? Include things like your job title, the employer, your key goals of your work, things like that. So let's talk it through. So whilst volunteering at the MSc as a sea champion, our aim was to improve understanding and raise awareness of marine conservation issues, including marine plastic. I had the opportunity to present to a women's group. Okay, so it just lays us thing. We know a little bit about this person, what they were doing, okay, and why they were doing it. Next up, middle of the story. Okay, so what specific role did you play? What steps did you take to achieve your goal? Try to relate it to the criteria you're seeking to evidence. So this individual could have said, I designed, and delivered a presentation to a women's group. At one of their weekly meetings, 26 people were present on the effects of plastic pollution in the marine environment. Remember, this is all about telling us a time when you trained or taught a group or individuals. This is about training and teaching a women's group, okay? And there's 26 people there. So a fact or a figure really helps a little bit. And you'll see this is kind of like, this is a very much, hopefully an entry level, quite an easy example to begin of walking through, okay? And then finally, what was the outcome of the work? Where's the punchline? What's the ending of this? Okay, so what happened or changed as a result of the work? Try and relate it to the bigger picture if you can. So this person said, as a result, the women's group decided to replace plastic cups and paper plates they used at their weekly meetings with ceramic ones. Nice, okay. They also booked me again for their first beach cleaning event. They told me that they were inspired to do more to reduce plastic pollution in their own homes. So it might sound like quite a modest thing, maybe speaking to 26 people, but there were some tangible outcomes here for marine conservation, and some really nice things that employers will remember you by. So having done that, your job really then is to take those 3 bits, those 3 statements, those 3 paragraphs, try and edit it down, okay? You've really got to crunch it down. If you can get it to about 50 words, that's the kind of ideal sort of length to be put into a cover letter alongside other kind of high profile, relevant criteria that you're matching from your evidence matrix. Okay, I won't read it out here, but you can see here on screen of kind of 50-word statements. Okay, and then once you've got that far, okay, and always try and connect it, to employers' keywords if you can. So we're talking about teaching a group or individuals. Here it very clearly says, I taught a group, okay, and I see nothing wrong with embolding that, to be honest, making it super clear, so the person who's shortlisting can clearly see, which of their criteria you're referencing. Going from 50 words, the next job really is to get it down to fewer than 30 words, a really kind of short statement. This is ideal for a CV or a resume story, okay? As you can see here on screen, As a Marine Conservation Society Sea Champion, there's the beginning, I taught a 26-person women's group about marine plastic pollution, resulting in reduced plastic use and collaborating on a beach clean event. Okay. Now, obviously, we stripped out to keep just the core, the basics in what is quite a short, tight sentence, as clear and as succinct as possible, but keeping in the important stuff about what they were doing, some of their outcomes, the facts, the figures, the stuff that really relates quite clearly, teaching a group. Okay. Right, so you can see how this can start to take time. Okay, you've got that many criteria, you need to kind of work through the evidence, but once you've done it, it gets quicker and quicker. Okay, and once you've kind of built your first evidence matrix for your first job, okay, keep it. Okay, and the next job that comes along, you'll likely reuse a lot of that and add a few new ones. So it will get bigger and it will get more valuable and it'll make your applications so much stronger. Okay, so that's number 4, and over to number 5, Kristi, mistake number 5.
Whew, we've jam-packed this full of information,
Yeah.
haven't we? I just wanted to add too that this is actually adapted from a real example, so a real job and a real application that someone put in that did get an interview. So just a shout out to say thanks to the person, you know who you are, who provided that and who landed that interview. But also so you know that this is a real tangible example of an application that was successful. Okay, so mistake number 5 is making an employer's job difficult in shortlisting. So as you know, employers spend, on average, maybe 3 minutes reviewing an application, deciding whether to move forward with you or not. But it could be as little as 6 seconds or less. And what happens is that most applicants actually make the employer search for the information that they need, evidence against the criteria that they're looking for. So the message here is, don't think of an application like a Where's Wally or Where's Waldo game. Don't make the employer go searching for it. Help them find it. Because if you've got, if an employer's got 2 applications in front of them and one of them helps make their job easy and the other one makes their job hard, it's pretty obvious which one they're going to go for. So it's not a Where's Waldo game. So what can you do instead in order to make their job easier? So basically, the process Nick has just talked through is about identifying your evidence and then crafting career success stories to showcase it, right? So when you're putting together your application, you're going to start off with identifying what your best evidence is. So this is really like the most relevant, impressive evidence you have against the employer's criteria. And you want to highlight that stuff at the top of your CV or resume, and also right at the top of your cover letter. And we'll show an example in a second. And that helps grab an employer's attention at a glance, so they can decide, okay, I want to keep reading and find out more. And then you go into the sort of like the body of your resume or CV and the body of your cover letter, and you basically back up those sort of snapshots or highlights with your career success stories, and you connect them to the employer's criteria so that it's really easy to see what you're referencing. So let's look at an example of that in practice. So here, again, you've got the criteria the employers identified for this role. In this case, it's Blue Ventures. And over on the right is just sort of a portion of a cover letter as an example. So the first green arrow is basically just showing that up at the top here in the very first paragraph, this applicant's kind of presented those highlights of their best evidence just at a glance. And it's really, again, just to grab the employer's attention. There's a nice saying that I think we've heard and used before, which is put your punchlines at the start, don't hide them later down. And then you can see in the body here, they've actually put in their career success stories, and the second arrow is pointing to this. So this is like the longer version of a career success story that evidences this criteria experience of training and teaching groups and or individuals. And it's in bold, it's really easy to see. So the employer can just look at this and really quickly pick out the information that they need. Then let's go over to the CV or resume now. So same idea here. So the first green arrow is pointing to this highlight section right at the top of this person's CV. And that kind of captures their best evidence in 5 bullet points. And from there, the employer can quickly see, okay, this person looks promising. I want to learn more about them. And then they can go down into, the body of the document. And that's where your success stories, the shorter versions are. So that kind of 30-word success story, or shorter even. So the second arrow you can see hopefully there is that success story related to a specific position. And again, it's got some bolding there just to really help grab the employer's attention and make sure it clearly links to the criteria that they're looking for. So all that to say, you can make the employer's job easy. You can help them find your evidence against their criteria at a glance. And that's going to help you stand out so much more.
And I love the fact that they've used some logos there as well. I think when they're relevant and they are identifiable by the organization too, like the Marine Conservation Society is clearly relevant to Blue Ventures. And they've even used the Blue Venture colors almost as well, like the branding. So it just looks nice as well. That. So okay. Finally over to mistake number 5, Kristi, as well. No, 6, sorry, no, final one.
Yeah, so this is, this kind of relates to the last one a bit, I guess, mistake number 5, but this mistake is thinking more equals better. This is super common. I've been there. I think most of us have been there. And basically what this is, where you're trying to squeeze all 5 of your volunteer placements or your papers or your awards into page 2, and you're thinking, oh, maybe if I just go down to size 9.5 font, we'll get there. And I'll just
move those margins out a bit.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the poor employer is, like just looking for evidence of the key top criteria they've listed. And now we're into like an ultimate Where's Wally or Where's Waldo game, where they're searching through just a ton of information in order to get to that few bits of information they need. So obviously, less is actually more here. You want your key evidence, your best evidence to stand out. So what to do instead? Go back to that idea of a mission statement we started with at the beginning, that single sentence that says how you help the employer. Focus on your success stories, your best and your full sort of arsenal of success stories, and make sure that those are the focus of your application. And then for anything else, you can use this test and just ask yourself, does this word or sentence or paragraph contribute to my key message? If the answer is no, and it's not adding anything to help your case, then just remove it and be ruthless with it. So the less you've got in there in your application, the more that your key evidence is really going to stand out, and the easier the employer's job is going to be. So message here, less is more.
Less is always more, yeah. And we've packed so much into this, and I'm also clocking time. We're actually bang on our time as well. So less is more. We've managed to get quite a lot in this time. Now, if you'd like to know a little bit more about this, if you'd like to go further as well, I think we're still sort of touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of the value we can deliver for you around kind of applications. We're kind of quite excited, super excited to say that we are launching a new course next week, Monday. It opens on Monday. And we're running a discount through till the following Sunday as well. And we're calling this How to Apply for Any Conservation Job, okay? Now, what this is a totally new online course designed by Kristi and I to lead you through our step-by-step proven process really for crafting successful job applications. We know what employers are looking for, and we've developed a system for making high quality CVs, resumes, cover letters, and application forms. And after completing the course, you'll be able to create high quality job applications that significantly increase your chances of success and also for landing interviews. So let me just really quickly kind of show you a little bit behind the scenes as to what the course looks like. Okay. Can you see my screen still there, Kristi?
Yep, looks good.
Oh, great. Okay. So this is, we will be sending you full details by email on Monday about this. Okay. So really the message is kind of keep your eye on the inbox, but this is like a little sneaky peek. Okay. So how to apply for any conservation job. What we're going to do in this is it's a 10-week training program. You get access for a full year. Okay, so you don't have to do it in 10 weeks. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to kind of pace you through a 10-week training program. Each week you'll receive the latest unit guiding you through our step-by-step process for how to apply for the jobs, okay, and a task associated with that. You get our support, okay? You're not on your own with this one. You'll have our support via email, monthly Zoom sessions, and also in our private Conservation Careers Pro community, which I'll tell you about in a second. You can go at your own pace, okay? So you have a full year, and you'll also get access to a growing range of our kind of career guides. We have a free guide that's widely available too. It's free on Amazon, it's free on our website. How to apply for a conservation job, there's a handbook there too. We'll also highlight this through the course. Everyone who completes gets a certificate of completion, and you also get access to our full jobs board. Okay, so you get 12,000 live jobs every year. Okay, plus internships and volunteerships, if that's a word as well. And we're also building as we go an application library. Okay, so for this you'll get access to a library of successful applications. So you can go in there, see what's worked for other people, learn from that, perhaps copy some bits of it because it might work for you too. Okay, and use it for inspiration, guidance, and much more. At the end of it, what you'll have is a completed application that you've kind of worked through using our process. And at that point, you can kind of send that to us, to Kristi and I, and we'll give you a quick one-to-one feedback on that as to what you can improve and which areas you've been really strong as well. So you kind of get that feedback kind of built in. If you don't like it, there's a 14-day money-back guarantee as well. So, okay, so we're kind of backing things up. If you don't like it, we know we'll give you your money back. Who is it for? Okay, it's for really job seekers. So if you're in the job market right now, you might have graduated recently, looking for work. For people who are looking to switch careers, you might be in an unrelated sector right now, looking to switch your career into conservation. I'm not really sure how your experience kind of relates or how you can kind of talk about it to employers. Okay, it's really good for students as well that are preparing for graduation in the job hunt. And it's quite good for people who are also professional conservationists, but looking to take that next step and making sure their application stands out from the crowd. Very briefly, I won't go into huge detail here. The units are, there's 10 units. You have a welcome week, okay. In week 2, unit 2, we're going to be planning for success, about pulling together the best bits you'll start to kind of build the application from. In unit 3, we started to talk about it today already, identifying your best evidence. And then it's unit 4, crafting career success stories. So some of the things we talked about today will go into much more detail, and you'll have step-by-step guides and also tasks to help you to kind of lead you through building your application through the course. Module 2, building the applications. You've got all the pieces ready through module 1. In module 2, we're going to actually building those applications together. So building cover letters, we'll be building CVs and resumes. Then we'll be talking about the design aspects of it, which can become really important. Okay, people, take the first bite with the eye. We've got to make it look good. Finally, unit 8, we're going to be reviewing and then finalizing it. At that point, if it's a live application and the deadline allows, you can absolutely submit that to the job application and see if you get through to interview. If not, it's just been like a process of learning that you can then apply for any job which goes into the future for yourselves. We've put in some bonus content there as well. Okay, so if you get through to interview, which we hope many of you will off the back of this course, we'll talk about how do you deliver and prepare for successful interviews. Our goal here is to get you hired. And then finally, unit 10 is all about commitment. So turning what you've learned through the course into a clear plan of action that's going to get you hired. Before we go any further, before we go to Q&As for you guys, we just thought we'd kind of share some quotes and stories from some of the people that have kind of had our help over recent years with their applications. There's only 2 minutes and we go straight to Q&A. So let's have a quick listen.
After years of work in basic science, I realized that I wanted to veer my energy and my effort into nature conservation. But the truth was that I had no idea about the sector and I needed help to understand how I could make such a change.
So I was putting out applications and I wasn't getting anything in return. And I thought, I don't know what else to do. I've got the education, I've got work experience, and I don't really, frankly, have the time or the money to go and do much more else. And I wasn't sure what else was expected of me.
People who are reading conservation applications don't have very much time and they want to get through it quickly and get the information they need fast. So writing applications that were more in that style was really helpful.
The experience of working on my job application with conservation careers taught me a huge amount, beginning by introducing me to the world of conservation and the requirements for a successful start, especially as a career switcher, all the way to the step-by-step guidance on how to go through this terribly challenging process and produce an application I'm extremely happy with.
At the point when I contacted Conservation Careers, I'd say that was the point that it all turned and everything became a lot more positive for me. I started getting responses from job applications. I learned a lot of skills that I used in other applications, loads, and that's how I now write any applications that I write. And from that point forward, that's what I carried on doing. I found the dream conservation job that I'd wanted and got into that. So that's what I'm doing now. You know, I'd encourage anybody who's thinking about using the service to just do it, because it's worth getting a second opinion on your applications, even if you think they're quite good. If it's not working, there's obviously a reason for that, and you might have great experience, but just contact them because they'll be able to tell you how to communicate it more effectively, I would say.
So definitely just do it. It could literally change your life, and reading the other testimonials on the website, you'll see that it has changed people's lives, and it could just mean a difference between you getting your dream job and not, by simply just doing the course and getting yourself out there in the right professional way and making yourself stand out.
I wholeheartedly recommend the Conservation Careers Job Applications course to whosoever is thinking of diving into the process of getting hired. The sun has come out. Thanks so much, Conservation Careers.
How nice. Thank you, Magda, Nick and Belinda as well for those super kind words. It's really nice to kind of hear from the people that we help, you know, through our services. And I don't know, it makes me really happy and really humble, you know, that people like that are out there in the jobs that they deserve. You know, we kind of help them over that hurdle, and we'd love to help you too. So keep an eye on your inboxes. We'll be telling you more about the course from Monday next week. It closes on the following Sunday. Okay. In terms of one last thing then before Q&A, super last thing, we are, as part of the course, we're going to be launching what we're going to call CC Pro, Conservation Careers Pro, which is a totally new private community to help you to implement all the learning that you're going to get through the course. I just want to show you what this looks like in the background here. So this is CC Pro. We have different areas of what we're doing. So in our course and applications area, we'll be releasing our modules and our units each week in here. You as participants can share your task work and share and get comments and feedback from Kristi and I, and also from the other people that will be going through the course with you. There's a course common room where you can kind of chat about things, and we'll be showcasing our applications as well, the successful applications that you can kind of learn from. And then more generally, okay, we have a member spotlight. We'll be sharing the spotlight of the week, and we'll be sharing our highs and lows each week, so you won't be alone anymore. Okay, we're going to see how you're getting on, what are the challenges and what are some of the successes that you're going to see, you know, through your career and through the course. All the announcements will be brought in here. They'll come into your inbox too. And each week and each month, we'll be doing special events, and you can get the replays as well. We kind of have our diary of events in here. You can see what's kind of coming up. You can kind of also synchronize it with your own calendars as well, so you kind of don't miss any events, any webinars, any Q&As, okay, any things that we're going to be organizing for you guys that are going through the course. And if you miss anything, we'll also be sharing the replays in here as well, okay, and more. You can jump in, see the other members in here. You can download our ebooks, which are all in here. We'll also be sharing some of the jobs that kind of come through Conservation Careers as well at the same time. So it's going to be a really busy area, okay, so you get the course and you get CC Pro as part of this community. So again, you know, we know the job hunt can be a kind of super lonely place. And this is about bringing you together, sharing your experiences with each other. Kristi, myself, and the other team at CC in there helping you kind of to get through this, you know, big hurdle that I know many of you are facing, that we know we can kind of help you through. Okay, well, that's more than enough from us, guys. You know, we do want to allow quality time for Q&A at the end. We only have 5 minutes at the moment. I'm happy to overrun by a little bit and try and answer a few extra questions as best we can. I can see the thumbs up from Kristi as well. Thank you so much. So I saw a quick question in the chat there as well. I'm just going to answer it as I saw it. Okay, so Tora, can you access CC Pro if you're on the Kickstarter course? At the moment, no. Okay, is the answer to that. We're going to be trialing CC Pro for 3 months as part of this new course. I'm already super excited about the potential of what we can do with CC Pro, and the idea is to move all our private Facebook communities into CC Pro, okay, over time. So hopefully by the end of the year, the answer will be yes. But at the moment, we're just piloting it, okay, which is why it's a kind of, you know, a little kind of pilot system rather than going full host on everything. Right, okay, so I'm going to go to the Q&As. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in and you can upvote. Okay, and we're going to answer the ones at the top with the most votes and work our way down. Okay, and I think we'll do 10 minutes. Okay, we'll go to 5 past and see how we're getting on. So the first question up there is our friend, Bill. Hello, Bill. Thanks for joining us as always. Any skills or qualifications that you perceive to be in a low supply or high demand for the composite of jobs that we post? Great question. Okay. Do you want to have a crack at that, Kristi? And I'll also firing as well.
Sure. I think, well, I mean, and Bill, you might have seen this one, but we obviously published sort of a summary guide to this because we analyzed some of the skills that employers are looking for in the sector, you know, looking across like thousands of jobs, and kind of identified some of the top ones as communications, being a really key one. You know, how do we communicate messages to different groups in different ways and get people on board and get them taking action? And another is project management. And another, which, you know, within project management, there's a lot of skills, you know, communications falls in there too, you know, relationship building, there might be a lot of things within that too. And then fundraising also, you know, obviously getting the funds to get stuff done on the ground is crucial for conservation to work. So those were kind of the maybe top ones that we've focused on, and we can share a link to that guide too. But by no means are those the only ones. I would just say that in general, you know, anyone who's coming into the conservation sector, bringing skills from elsewhere, you know, if that's from business or from marketing, that are just a little bit different to what's already in the conservation sector, usually that's of great value. We just need more diversity of skills in the sector, and to do a better job of learning from other sectors also. Nick, anything you want to add to that?
Honestly, I think you've answered that brilliantly. Yeah, no, spot on. Yeah. So comms, fundraising, project management, those are very common across the sector, and that's what employers are looking for and often struggling to find as well. When we look at the jobs that are available and look in terms of their abundance and popularity as well. So we find that the kind of hot jobs tend to be around kind of science and research, fundraising, communications as well, which I think also relates to some of the skills that we just talked about too. So thanks so much for your question, Bill, and great for joining us as always. Nice to have you on the call. Vicky, I was going to answer Vicky and then Sarah jumped above you, so I'm going to still go with Vicky and Sarah will come to you in a second. Vicky, nice short simple question. If you can keep your questions short, that's really helpful to us as well. Like a sentence is perfect. So if you have no experience, how can you start? You might have heard me kind of rifling through my notebook while Kristi was talking there. We just did a podcast exactly on this subject, released last week. Where do you start if you have no experience? Okay, so I was trying to find all the notes and things that I shared through that with our friends Nando and also Stephanie on the podcast. So I'd go off and listen to that if you want to go deeper into this. Some quick things that kind of jump to my mind. Okay, so there's lots you can do. Okay, the one is kind of just start doing some voluntary work. I know it's hard volunteering sometimes. You don't have to spend money to volunteer. Okay, but perhaps you can find a local group, perhaps you can find an online group or a community you can just get involved with to start to kind of build up some experience. It's good to know what sort of job it is you're looking for in the first instance. Now, volunteering or getting experience might be part of your exploration. Okay, so that might be you trying different things, you know, and starting to figure out what you like and what you don't like and which direction you want to take in. But if you already have that clarity of I want to do this sort of role, you know, then try and get some experience of that through volunteering, through networking as well with people already in those jobs. I can talk a bit more about that in a second. Is a really good way of kind of getting going and also bridging any gaps. So understand the job you want, understand what you have and what you need. Okay, and then try and find experiences that fill that what you need, those gaps we call them. Okay. Another way of getting experience would be to figure out who it is that's doing what it is you want to do, okay, within the sector, who's really good at, you want to do fundraising, who's great at fundraising, WWF are brilliant at fundraising, and others, you know, do some research online, find the organizations and then find the individuals doing those jobs. Who's the fundraising manager at WWF in London, if that's where you're based, for example? Find their name, find their email, and then connect to them personally. Ask if you can have a quick chat about what it's like to do their job. You can have a Skype or a Zoom or a coffee nowadays, perhaps, something like that, and see if that can then lead to an experience which you can do together. Another way of doing it, quick brainstorm, is actually launching your own project. Just doing something yourself. Finding a project. It could be a fundraiser. It could be a local survey. It could be whatever it is you're interested and passionate about. Just getting involved and kind of getting stuck in. There's absolutely loads of ways of getting experience, and when you might feel stuck, but don't feel stuck. So thanks for asking the question. Do listen to the podcast, because I say we talk about this for a whole hour. So there's loads in that. Anything to add on to that, Kristi?
I think you covered it. Basically, just that I added the link to that podcast in the chat. And yeah, I would just echo that, if I think about what my approach was to trying to get experience at the beginning, I was looking for the experience before I'd thought about where I wanted it to take me. And so, yeah, I would just encourage you to do what Nick said and think first about, what do you actually, where might you want to go? What kind of job might you want to step into? And what do you actually need out of experience in order to help you get there? Because otherwise you might end up in a situation where you're investing time and money in getting experience, but it's actually not helping you get to a place that you want to go to. So if you kind of always have that next step in mind, that really helps.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Vicky. Appreciate that. Sarah Cato, what advice do you have for career switchers? You've got an MSc in conservation biology, and you've been working in climate change and sustainable development for 3 years. You want to get back into conservation, but can't afford to do an internship or volunteer work, and you feel on the back foot in terms of conservation work experience. Okay. Another great question. Sarah, so I suspect you have a lot of relevant or transferable skills. I mean, you're not so far outside of conservation when I hear you've got an MSc in conservation biology, been working in climate change and sustainable development, which are very much sort of related within the kind of conservation space almost, if you like. So you're kind of slightly on the outer rim. That's probably how you feel, but it's not like a full switch. You're not going from, banking or nursing or teaching or something. You're going to have a lot of things in your career today, which I think are going to be relevant in the sector and employers will be interested in. So I would spend a little bit of time cruising around job boards like Conservation Careers and others, and just trying to identify the sort or types of jobs that you're looking to secure. Keep a log of them, 5, 6, 7 jobs, like typical jobs, next jobs that you'd like to secure. Hopefully they're all quite close and you have a niche and when you kind of identify an area you're interested in. Review what what the employers are looking for within those jobs, what are the recurring patterns, and then see, well, what have you got from your history? Pull together that evidence matrix we talked about earlier. List the typical criteria out, list your career to date, including your master's and earlier as well, and just see what you've got, because you might find there's some jobs in there that you can apply for quite readily. Okay, where there are some gaps, and there's always going to be some gaps, you have a decision to make. Are you going to try and fill them? Are you going to do some additional experience? It sounds like volunteering and internships are off the cards. That's fine. So perhaps can you do some online courses to bridge those gaps? Are there other ways, just self-learning, mass online courses or YouTube, or another way of bridging that gap? Or is it a case of you've got 70, 80% and actually you don't need 100% to be putting in good applications? You just need to be working on your applications and putting in good ones. Okay, so I would just try and spend a bit of time identifying the niche, the place that excites you, the way you want to be. Okay, understand what employers are looking for. Okay, and then trying to understand whether you're ready to go, whether you need to bridge some gaps, and understand how you might do that. We have a separate course that kind of talks through that. I'm not here to kind of talk too much about too many courses, but we have something called the Conservation Career Kickstarter, which is all for people like you who are looking to kind of navigate your options and pull together a career plan as well. So it might be worth taking a little look at that as well. Anything additional to that, Kristi?
Not much, only that we actually, so we gave you guys 6 mistakes on this webinar, which were kind of like the top 6. But another one we find is that career switchers assume that they have to compete with recent graduates, like recent conservation graduates. And actually sometimes, depending, what you identify as your target job or the ideal place you'd like to be in the sector, sometimes it's way more advantageous to focus on the experience that you already bring and you can offer that's different, rather than to assume you need to go back and, you know, get a degree or get something that a lot of people already have. So it all depends on where you want to go, but I would just encourage you not to assume that you have to start at the beginning again. You might actually already have a lot to offer.
Yeah, and more employers are actually looking to recruit from outside the sector or alongside the sector in. They want people with the really good skills, often from corporate sector and others, to kind of come through. So don't count yourself out because you're not sort of in the bubble, if you like. You know, you could be very attractive to employers. David Martinez, thank you, Sarah, by the way. I'm an American looking for conservation careers in London. And as such, you need an employer with the ability to sponsor a work visa. Is this realistic in the conservation field? What industries, companies, organizations, or sectors should you focus on pursuing for this? Kristi, as a North American, you might also be quite well placed, but my reflection on that would be, yes, you know, conservation is an international sector. Some employers are more international in their focus than others, and therefore going to be, you know, more open to kind of supporting work visas, you know, between various countries. And obviously, different countries are easier than others. So, industries and companies and organizations to be working for, I'd probably look at the kind of the more international reaching conservation organizations, of which there are a number. Examples being BirdLife International, Wildlife Conservation Society, IUCN. Now you can, on our website, actually, if you're a member, you can jump in and look at all the jobs going back that we've posted forever. We call it the expired job listings, you know, career explore area. You could go in there, you can filter by London and just see who the employers are in London that we've found over the last 6, 7, 8 years. And see which of the kind of big international NGOs or the international outreaching organizations within that, of which there'll be many. It's worth mentioning also that Cambridge is only within an hour's reach of London on the train, probably about 50 minutes, something like that. And that is a real hub for conservation organizations. So I'd definitely include Cambridge if that's within a kind of a commutable distance for you, because there are a lot of organizations based in Cambridge too. It's just north of London. So it's worth looking there too. So I'd start with the international NGOs and also the big international NGOs that already are kind of working overseas, but I wouldn't just focus on them, but they would be the ones that would be, you know, more open to kind of visas and things. Kristi, what about yourself? What would you add?
You know, yeah, I mean, obviously some countries are easier than others. Like as a Canadian, we have a couple visa options that actually we can apply for, and it allows us to go work in the UK and Australia, etc. So that makes it a little easier because you can take more of the responsibility on yourself as the applicant. But yeah, definitely if you don't have, you know, depending where you're from, if you're American or if you're from a different country, say, and you don't have that option of a visa, then yeah, look to organizations first that are more international, because they'll be more likely to have opportunities for and consider people who are coming from different countries and might really value all of those different perspectives and skill sets too. Yeah. It would be an amazing thing if all employers sort of posted that on their job advertisements, actually, you know, like who the role is open to.
Yeah.
In a future ideal world.
Yeah. And it's probably worth just saying, you know, the employer just wants the best applicant, you know, in the job, doing the job. And if they're overseas, they have to ask the question, are we willing to go through, you know, supporting a visa application? If they've done it before, like an international NGO probably has, then they're probably more open to it. But it doesn't mean that any organization wouldn't be open to it. And it might help them if you've already figured the visa situation out for the employer. So if you know the system, you know what the employer would need to do and the sorts of hurdles they need to jump, because they might just not know it, you know, so they might not be familiar with it. So you could kind of make it slightly easier for them. But really, in the first instance, they want you first, you know, put in a good application, get through that interview, get that job offer, and then sort of negotiate from there on in. Okay, I think we're gonna have to make this the final question, I'm afraid, guys, just because of time. I'd love to go through and answer them all. I apologize if we don't have time for all, but hopefully you understand why that might be. Final one's from Kate Stevenson. That might be Kate, who we know, Kate on Conservation. If it is, welcome, good to see you. When tailoring my CVs, I often find that I want to highlight specific parts of my career experience higher up on the page, especially if the employer is going to spend only a few seconds looking at my resume. Well, I've often learned over the years that a CV would traditionally list my most recent career experience higher up. What's a good way of pulling out my most relevant experience to the job I'm applying for without making it look as if though I have lots of gaps in my career history, which I don't actually have? Kristi, I think this is
okay.
perfect.
Ooh, there's lots of stuff happening in this question. Great question. Thanks, Kate. Yeah. Okay. So first thing I would just, and this is actually another mistake that we kind of recognize that we didn't cover in this webinar just because of time. I would not worry so much about gaps in your career, because it's very rare that an employer sort of looks at your application and is actually scanning for gaps. What they're scanning for is just the evidence that you meet their criteria and you can do the job well. So I wouldn't worry so much about the gaps issue. But in terms of how can you structure things, yeah, having a highlight section at the top of your CV where you kind of capture the best, most relevant, impressive evidence is a good start. And I think we probably recommend just doing that across the board, because it grabs the employer's attention. It kind of reassures them at a glance that you have potential to meet what they're looking for. And then you can go back and provide more detail using your career success stories in the rest of your CV or resume. You can also, you're not necessarily, I would say you're not necessarily constrained to the chronological format. It's a common one, but you can break up your experience section into categories. It might be relevance and additional experience, or it might be in certain themes, like this is communications and this is project management, or this is, community engagement, whatever it is. Like you can actually create themes and group your experience into those, so that helps you structure it in a way that your most impressive, relevant stuff is higher up. I'm realizing that I talk with my hands a lot, and I should probably not do that on Zoom. Hopefully that answered most of the question. I'm just rereading it here. Nick, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, I think it is a tricky one, isn't it? I think when we see CVs, we feel quite constrained to just sort of list our career to date, most recent at the top and work down. And it's not always the best format, as you're kind of touching on, Kate, to kind of show how relevant you are. And the employer, all they're doing is trying to say, well, these are my criteria. What have you done that's relevant? So, a much easier and possibly better way for everyone is just to have a section up top, which is kind of like relevant experience, relevant skills, highlights, whatever you want to call it, that just showcases what you have from that evidence matrix, the most important, impressive stuff there front and center, as many relevant sort of short bullet points with clear statements that relate to that criteria as possible. And then below that, you can still have your kind of career history, if you like, an experience, and that can be chronological, but it's just shorter, kind of more pithy, because really you've put it all front and center for that person, So I wouldn't worry about the kind of perceived gaps. I would really just make it super clear. This is how you fit. And as Kristi said, you might want to break that up with 2, 3, 4, 5 different bullets, and dependent on what the employer's looking for. But Kate, if you're the Kate I think you are, I know you're a really good writer, you're a great communicator, so you can do that, no problem at all. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to stop there with the Q&As. I'd love to keep going. We do keep a record of everything that people ask as well, and we kind of keep track of things, so we can keep producing, webinars and suitable resources for you guys as well. Keep helping you as best we can. But that's enough for us. We've already overrun by 15 minutes. So thank you, everyone. The majority of you that stayed with us right to the end. We really appreciate you. We appreciate your time. I hope you're walking away with some good ideas and some good practical steps we can start to now implement into your applications going forwards. Keep your eyes open for the course that's opening up on Monday, How to Apply for Any Conservation Job. We'll teach you this in huge detail, okay, step by step, so you'll know exactly what to do over a 10-week period, but you'll have it for a full year, and beyond if you need it. So we are here for you guys. We appreciate you. You stay safe and well. And Kristi, a huge thank you as always for joining. Nice to have you on the call again.
Always fun.
Always fun. We enjoy it a huge amount. Yeah. So we'll share the recording again tomorrow, so you can always watch it back. And anyone who's watching who missed it, welcome. And thanks if you've been joining us on YouTube too. I think we hit the Zoom limit today. So if you're on YouTube, good to see you guys there too. Thanks for joining. Okay, that's it for us. Till next time, guys. We'll see you next month. All the best. Bye from me and bye from Kristi.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.